John the Baptist was beheaded. What did John the Baptist do? Why did he have to die through that gruesome punishment of beheading? Well, there's something nasty that had happened. Herod Antipas had divorced his own wife. Herod Antipas divorced his wife, Parcelais. And Herodias divorces Philip, who was Herod Antipas's brother, so that these two could get together. So you see something like a soap opera happening there. Herod Antipas divorced his wife, Herodias divorced her husband, and now, oh, voila, they can get married. It's a soap opera. But what happened was that John the Baptist heard of that, and he spoke truth to power. Sometimes we as Christians are called, in fact, not sometimes, all the time, we are called to speak truth to power. And John the Baptist spoke truth to power. He says, no, it's not right. What you just did it's not right in the sight of God to do such a nasty thing. Okay? He told John the Baptist in an open letter to him, what is equivalent in today's parlance. In today's parlance, he wrote what is known as an open letter to the king or the president, the chief executive. Because of that, John the Baptist was arrested and put in prison for speaking truth to power. That's all it is, speaking truth to power. And now, Herodias, who was one of the culprits in this soap opera, Herodias carried a grudge against John the Baptist. She must have been saying that just throwing that man in the dungeon is not the only thing you should do to him. Putting him in the slammer is not the best punishment. Herodias needed something more. She wanted his head. So John the Baptist was imprisoned by this dictator. And Herod was not a nice man. You could imagine that on that first Palm Sunday, he rode to Jerusalem. The same time Jesus was coming in from the east, Herod was coming in from the west with a war horse, a sign that anybody who dares to even challenge me does not have a long time to live. And Jesus was coming in from the east on a donkey, riding on a donkey, which is a sign of peace. One was prepared to make war. The other one was prepared to make peace. Herod was not a nice man. Well, it happened in chapter 6 that Herod threw a party, just a party, some kind of merrymaking for his courtiers, the people in his government. And music was playing and dancing. And Herod's daughter danced in such a nice way that it pleased those who were attending the party. And of course, I believe at that time that Herod must have been in some kind of drunken stupor. So, Herod made an oath. You ask of me whatever you want right now, and I will give it to you. Even if you want half my kingdom, I am ready to give you half that kingdom. I don't know who can make that kind of a promise. So she, the daughter, says, what can I don't even know what to ask for. I have everything. She went to Herodias and asked. And Herodias says, say you want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And that was how he sent, and John the Baptist was beheaded in prison. Of course, we know from that chapter 6 that his disciples went, that is John's disciples went and buried the headless carcass of John the Baptist. But Herod definitely was very sorry for the oath he has made, but because he has made it in so openly, and that is why you be careful what you speak, because those words can come and haunt you. Okay? But now, because of the oath he had made, he had to fulfill it for his respect. And therefore, that's how John the Baptist was beheaded. Now, In the gospel reading for today, Jesus entered the town. And the town, as we know already, in John's Gospel chapter 10, was the area around the Jordan. We know that's where John the Baptist's ministry was, the area around the Jordan. And that was why Herod was able to lay hands upon him. Because we saw here in chapter 10, verse 1, that this was where he was ministering. Okay, so the passage today is telling us that Jesus had just found himself in Herod's territory. You know, all this time, Jesus was doing the Galilean ministry outside of the reach of John the Baptist. Do we have it clear? All this time, Jesus' ministry was outside of the reach of Herod. But in chapter 10, verse 1, Jesus had just entered Herod's territory. So this is why this is very important in today's gospel reading. I wonder why the framers of the Revised Lectionary left it out. So the region beyond the Jordan means that Jesus had found himself where Herod Antipas has authority. That small detail in chapter 10, verse 1, will lead us to conjecture, and it's very important, the word conjecture. The passage does not tell us that, but from what we're saying, leads us to conjecture that the question that was posed to Jesus about divorce was really and truly a trap. Why? John the Baptist had spoken about divorce to Herod, and he ended up being imprisoned and later on beheaded. Now, this trap, especially the question about divorce, and not only divorce and remarrying, was purposely intended for Jesus to incur Herod's anger. And if Jesus incurs Herod's anger, Jesus might face a similar fate like what John the Baptist faced in chapter 6. Is it clear? Okay. So we see that it was not just, in the face of it, a little trap. It was a big trap. Jesus could also, first of all, if he had said, oh no, yes, it's fine to divorce, there were factions in the Hebrew scripture that would have said, oh, this man is not a good preacher. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he says, no, you should not divorce, okay, then guess what? That word will get to Herod, and Jesus will be arrested. So Jesus had to find a way outside of that trap. The question was set. The trap has been set. But now, Jesus, as with many philosophers of the time, did not answer their question directly. Jesus answered their question by asking them another question of his. What did your law say? What did your law say? And they says, Moses said for the man to write a certificate of divorce and give it to the woman. Well, when they said Moses, they were talking of the first 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible, which are attributed to Moses. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those first 5 books of the Old Testament or of the Bible is what is referred to as Moses. So when Jesus asked, what did Moses say? He's saying, what did you find in those first 5 books or the law? Because even though we almost always only know of the 10 commandments, there are actually 612 laws in the first 5 books of the Bible. 612 laws. And in the intertestamental period, there were people like those who wrote the Talmud, the Mishnah, and the Gemara. All were giving contemporaneous commentaries on the law all the time, especially the Talmud. So Jesus asked them, what did Moses say? And the response that these interlocutors gave to Jesus is found in a passage in the Bible, and I have to bring our attention to that. It is found in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 5. So the response from these Pharisees is found in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 5. It reads as follows. Suppose a man enters into a marriage with a woman, but she does not please him because he finds something objectionable about her. And so he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. She leaves his house, and goes off to become another man's wife. So there's this marriage. And something happens. This man is not pleased by the woman. And so she is kicked out of the house, but she must be given a certificate of divorce. And now, according to this law in Moses, in Deuteronomy chapter 24, she goes out and marries another man. Then suppose the second man dislikes her. Trouble. Something happens again. I would have imagined before you marry somebody, you must like the person at first. But now, all of a sudden, this man dislikes this same woman again, writes her a bill of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. Or the second man who married her dies. Her first husband who sent her away is not permitted. So something must have happened. Either the second husband does not like something about this woman, or that second husband dies. This first woman, this same one woman, cannot go back to the first husband. Okay? She has been defiled for that. And it will be abhorrent to the Lord. And you shall not bring guilt on the land that the Lord your God is giving you for a possession. And then there's verse 5. When a man is newly married, he shall not go out with the army or be charged with any related duty. He shall be free at home for 1 year to be happy with the wife whom he has married. That also has very important repercussions. Because it used to be when, I'm going to address verse 5 first. When the man, remember now, even up to this day, in Israel, always, when you are of military age, you are supposed to have some time of military service, except for the Orthodox Jews who have some kind of religious exceptions. But you have to be able to serve. Well, if this man has married, sometimes what they will do is they will divorce the wife and go do military duty and come back to the same wife. But no, says Moses, you cannot do that. But anyway, verses 1 to 4. Okay? We know that in Jesus' day, women were less than second-class citizens, unfortunately. Women were not treated well in that milieu, in that time. So, a woman needs a man for protection, especially when you go to the court of law. A woman always needs a man in property inheritance issues. And we know that the testimony of a woman has no weight. How do we know that? When Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and says the Lord is risen, Peter and John did not believe her. They had to go see for themselves. Because she was the first witness to the resurrection. But Peter and John had to run to the tomb to make sure that what she is saying is true. The woman's testimony does not have strong weight. Also, Jesus, at one time in Matthew's gospel, was walking, and then there was in the city called Nain, and this woman was beside herself. She was very upset because her only child, she was a widow to begin with, the only person that could protect her from all these troubles is the one son that she has, and now the son is dead. And she was beside herself, very sorrowful, mourning, cannot be controlled, until Jesus had pity on her and restored her dignity by raising her son who was in the casket. By raising that son, it is more than just raising the son. Her life in the court of law, her life when it comes to the inheritance, everything else has been restored to her. She now has her dignity again. Very important. Okay? What are we seeing so far? Jesus always stands with the society, with the victims of the evils in society. The victims of society's ills. And in this case, we're giving examples of Jesus standing in line, lockstep, with women. In fact, even in the case of the woman caught in the act of adultery, first of all, even if there is punishment for adultery, why is it only the woman who gets punished? Only the woman was going to be stoned to death. So they brought this woman to Jesus. But Jesus knew that there are societal factors that could have caused this woman to be an adulteress. Similarly, Jesus knew, where is the man? How come only the woman is here to face punishment? And Jesus says, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. Correct. Okay? So Jesus always stands in the defense of the people in society who are victims of society's ills. So this woman became a forgiven woman. Also, we know of the case of the woman by Sychar, the well in Sychar, the Samaritan woman, as Jesus was passing by. This woman has had 5 husbands. And in fact, at that time, she was a paramour. She was a paramour to someone she was living at home with. But Jesus evangelized to her, and she in turn went to the entire village and became an evangelist. And not to belabor the point here, that woman went to the well at noon when the sun was hot. In Sychar, in the Middle East, desert Middle East, people, after meeting Jesus, she went to the village again, said, come and see a man. And the entire village came because she said, a man who has told me everything that I ever did. And she found Jesus, and her life was changed. There was also one last example here. There was a bent over woman. She was bent over, so she cannot even look up and see a man because she was always down like this because of something with her spine. For the Pharisees in the temple, in the synagogue, they were fine with that. But Jesus realized that, first of all, it's bad enough being a woman, bad enough that you can't even look up to a man. So Jesus straightened her back, and now she can stand up and talk to men. Jesus restored her, and now her dignity, so that she can look at you in the eye and make her point. Jesus always stands on the part of the victims of society's ills. So, we see that Deuteronomy, which I've already read out, chapter 24, verses 1 to 5, was used to take advantage of women. Jesus says, that is not right. Remember now, the question was a trick question. It was a trap question, wanting Jesus to be reported to Herod so that Herod will dish out to Jesus the exact same thing he did to John the Baptist. But Jesus found a way to use that to make a pronouncement that women are not supposed to be treated as second-class citizens. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 5, what are we talking of there? Verse 1. Suppose a man enters into into a marriage with a woman, but she does not please him because he finds something objectionable about her, and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand. So this man and this woman were married. And we can understand that in those days, there was not much of a period of courtship, even if there was. Usually marriages were decided between families, from a much older man to a much younger woman. But marriages, there was not much of a period of courtship. What Deuteronomy chapter 24 is saying is the equivalence in today's parlance. You go to a store, you buy you buy some good. You can try it free for 30 days. You try it free for 30 days, and if you don't like it, you can return it to the store. That is exactly what Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 1 is saying. Okay? So, you can return it for a full refund. Jesus says, we don't want that. Okay? So, if you look at Deuteronomy chapter 24 verses 1 to 5, where Moses talked about divorce, the intent was definitely not about the woman cooking roti. Neither was it the intent of the woman knowing well how to cook ackee and saltfish. Or, in Sierra Leone's terms, if the woman really knows how to cook bitter leaf soup with all those creatures, or shakpa, okay? It was more about that. It was more than that, I should say. It was more about lasciviousness, about lechery,